Yo, it's me, CSCOTT, baby. Welcome to Flashback Friday, where I take a look at an 80s film and talk about it. And this week it's the 1987 film Hellraiser, starring Doug Bradley, Claire Higgins, Andrew Robinson, Ashley Lawrence, and is directed by Clive Barker. Alright, so if you are watching and you see this pop up, or waiting and you're seeing this pop up and you're saying, wait a minute, he said yesterday in his Throwback Thursday review he was going to do this stuff. Yes, I did, and then I changed my mind. It happens. Eventually I will do the stuff if I get a way to watch it there. It was on streaming service, one of them, like Tubi or something. And so eventually I'll put it on. But for now, I came up with just Hellraiser. You know, it's 80s. You know? And yeah, so before I begin talking about this, I am going to do all of them. Yes, I'm in the middle of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as you can see. Now, I should actually put them down because that's not what this is. I should actually put the Hellraiser movies up there, but I'll do that for the second one. I'm going to be doing all of them. It's going to be a daunting task, which is why I'm missing it with Marvel Cinematic Universe movies, because the first four movies I think are good, and I can get through. And the eighth one's alright. But you get to 5, 6, 7, and even 9 and 10, and you just kind of, especially 10 has that gross out factor, where you just like, you know. But the first four I can get through, so I might do these 4 in a row. But in a row? Yes. So Hellraiser came out in 1987, and I said stars Doug Bradley, but he's barely in this one. And see, he's barely throughout most of these. I think the first 4, I think he's in the fourth one the most, I think. Maybe. And then people complain how if you don't know, so the first 3 were released with Clive Barker having a continuing story in mind. At least he kept on writing a continuing story. 4 was supposed to wrap that up, and then Dimension, who owned the Hellraiser franchise starting with 4, had these spec scripts just laying around and decided, hey, we'll add Pinhead in and make them Hellraiser movies. But the Pinhead stuff they added in didn't connect with the actual story from the previous films, so it made it confusing, especially Inferno. And everybody says, oh, Revelations is the worst. I'll give that to you. Revelations was the first one that they actually set out to make an actual Hellraiser film. The story, the plot, it kind of, resembles a Hellraiser film as it was intended from the first 4. But, yes, it's crap. But you go, the reason I don't like Inferno is its plot is confusing. It's hard to watch. And the first time I watched it, I got a massive headache from it. Which is why if I want to pop in a Hellraiser movie, I'll put in Hellraiser Hellworld, to be honest, because that one's the most easiest one to watch, I would say. It's got a confusing plot, but I'm just saying. Excuse me. So, now, okay, back to the original. The original Clive Barker classic, 1987's Hellraiser. It's a story. See, you see the Pinhead here. Well, to begin with, he was called Lead Cenobite, and he wasn't a main character. He wasn't supposed to be the main face of the franchise either. As originally, Julia was supposed to be the continuing thread throughout the film, but after the second one, she said nah, and she was gone. I think that Hellraiser has one of the most underrated final girls in Kirsty Cotton. She's one of my favorites. Even though you could say that she's some of you could say that she's a final girl just because she's the last one left, but if you think about it, she's built as unlike Alice from Friday the 13th, she's built as this final girl from the get-go. Like Laurie Strode before her, it focuses on her, whereas in Friday the 13th, it just focuses on any one of the campers until the last one's Alice, and you're just like, okay, she's the final girl. Where here, you focus on her from almost the get-go. I mean, you meet her family, and then she comes home, and then she has the family dinner, and then there's this little talk with her and her boyfriend, and you focus on her throughout the film as well as the other characters, but she's the main protagonist, so to speak, and that's why I think she's better than than Alice. You know what I mean? She's one of my favorite final girls, and people will throw out, "Oh, what's your favorite final girl?" "Oh, Ginny." "Yeah." For Friday Part 2, if you don't know. Laurie Strode. Okay. And they just throw out these names, but I never see Ashley Lawrence's name pop up. Usually I have to type in Kirsty Cotton, and I'll get a bunch of likes or hearts, and oh yeah, they forgot about her, and I typed it in, and oh yeah, because she's a great final girl, and I think she got 2 films where she's the main protagonist, and then she has a little cameo in the 3rd one, and I think she's one of the better, and she shows up in the 7th one, 6th Hellseeker, and we'll get to that. So, what's the story here? Well, the story is that Larry and his wife are moving into a family home where his brother Frank had been squatting in. And his brother Frank has picked up the main configuration. It's a puzzle box. And it gives people their greatest desires. At least that's according to the book. Here, he opens it, and he gets attacked by these hooks that take his soul to hell. However, while moving stuff in, Larry cuts his hand on a nail. It bleeds through the floorboards and brings Frank back to life as this disgusting looking kind of like if you have a model of the human body without the skin and stuff, it's the yuck looking thing like that, And so he ropes Julia, Larry's wife, who he had an affair with, on their fucking wedding night, by the way. They show in the flashbacks. He fucks her in her wedding dress, for God's sake. Oh. See why I like Kirsty so much? The main characters, even, I feel sorry for Larry. I do. Let me get the rest of the story going. So, he recruits her. I forgot her name now. I said it right. It's Claire Hagen's character, Julia. He recruits Julia to go out and flirt with men, bring them back to the house, kill them, and then he takes their life force, or takes some of their body parts, I guess, but not all their bodies. They still have to hide their bodies eventually. And I'm sorry, but this house is gross. When they first go in, there's bugs and shit crawling around, and they're just gonna move in and live there. I would have a deep clean of that fucking house. I mean, I'm not the cleanest. I'm not the cleanest liver out there. I don't know how to say it, but I'm not one to have my living quarters, my apartment squeaky clean all the time. But when something looks really dirty, I get in there clean. I make sure I don't get bugs or rats or anything. I make sure that it gets somewhat presentable. People come over and stuff. Sometimes you get, occasional stuff around the stove and stuff. They got to clean it off. But I try to make it presentable. This house is terrible. Before they even start moving things in there, they should have had a deep clean. Sound like my grandma right now. But they went through and had a deep clean. See, that's what happens when you work in the janitorial world. You watch this movie. They need to clean the whole place first. It's a rackety old place. It's one of those houses where everything is just like wood everywhere. The floors, the walls, everything is wood. It's like an old rackety house. Rickety, old rickety house. That's the word. And when they go in there, and then they have a dinner party that same night. How fast did you clean up them bugs? I mean, come on. And, Kirsty and her somewhat boyfriend, who's inconsequential, so inconsequential that he's dropped from the sequel, even though, and it's, the continuity errors between this and the second one they're not bad, but they're just, confusing, and we'll get to that when I review the second one. But here, so the whole thing is that Frank got the night configuration from someone in another country, and so he opened it up, he gets ripped up, and now he's trying to come back to life. Kirsty finds out about this, grabs the box, and somehow ends up passing out. And she ends up in like a hospital room, but you could tell it's supposed to be a hospital. You could tell it's just like a back room, a storage room somewhere or something that they couldn't afford to make it look like a hospital room. You could tell it's like a storage room. They were so cheap on money, so low on money, they just had to do it like this. You could tell they had a lot more money for the sequel. We'll get to that when I get to that one, but yeah, just. And so this cube takes her. You could tell that all the money went to the Cenobites. There's a scene where she's being chased by this one. You could tell it's on a little cart thing, just kind of going after her. It's a pretty cool scene. Eventually, she makes it back to the house because she thinks her dad's in trouble, and she finds her dad there just fine. But it turns out it's Frank. And I've always been confused about this. I watched this a few times. So he's taking everybody's body parts, right? And when he takes the skin, it's Larry's skin. Like, he doesn't get to have his own body back, his own skin back. It has to be Larry's skin. They do this again in Hellraiser Revelations, which I think it's a little bit better, because they have a twist on it. But why does it... Well, I mean, like, I suppose with body organs, you can't just say, you can't tell whether they're yours now or then, But skin, I don't know. Like, he wants to rebuild himself and be back to normal. But then he has his brother's skin. I don't know. And they convince Kirsty that this piled up nasty body is Frank. And then you have... So, Frank comes back to a human form. What's the first thing that he does? He and Julia fuck, of course. And then Kirsty comes back and he sees the remains and finds out. Because when Frank was all messed up, she saw him and he said, "Come to daddy." And when he's looking like Larry, he says, "Come to daddy." She figures it out and she runs off. The final part of this has like her and the boyfriend are there. Like, the boyfriend shows up out of nowhere, actually. And like, she opens the configuration, and they have to prove, because like, she opens it and shows that that's Frank, and they know it's not Frank. And she's like, "It's my father." She just doesn't get it at first. And then she realizes, and they take him, and they rip him apart. And you get that, I don't know, it's a decent line, but just kind of, where it's all ripped up, and he goes, "Jesus wept." I'm just like, okay, I don't know what to think about that. And then you have, like, they want to take her, too, because while Frank is the soul that they're owed because you opened the box, she also opened the box. And then the whole place burns down, right? And, well, okay, what I failed to mention is, during this film, there's this weird homeless guy that's eating bugs and stuff. He shows up, grabs the box, turns into this weird bird dinosaur creature and flies off. This is where the movie ends, and it cuts back where Frank got the box, with them saying, "What is your pleasure, sir?" Just like the movie began. And I think this is where the continuity errors will come in with the second one. Just remember that in the end of this one, the house burned down. Julia's death. She dies she gets in the way of Frank going after Kirsty, so he just sucks her dry on the stairs. And then she's found on the bed with the mech configuration box. What? And you could tell maybe they added that in to set up for a sequel, since Julia's the main antagonist of the sequel. But even when they try to connect it with the sequel, it doesn't make sense because the house burned down. And like I said, we'll get that with the sequel. But the first one stands on its own merits. I think it's pretty good. Maybe some of the gross out stuff. I mean, gross out stuff has been present in all these films. But this one, I don't know. I'm not big on gross out stuff. That's why I can't eat while I watch the Saw movies. But it's a decent film. For 1987, the year I was born, by the way. It's pretty good. 80s film. 93 minutes. Yeah, and Doug Bradley, for the parts that he has in it, is very good. We have such sights to show you. You know, I was gonna have my Rubik's Cube, but I can't find it. I have a Rubik's Cube I was gonna use. Maybe I can find it by the time I do the review for the second one. Who knows? But yeah, I'm gonna give it an 8 out of 10. I enjoy it. It's the first. You know, sometimes when you have the first film in a franchise, is not the best. Like the first Friday the 13th is not my favorite. You get better ones along the way. But yeah, just yeah. So, what are your thoughts on Hellraiser? Let me know in the comments below. Like, share and subscribe, and what be your pleasure, sir?